We're now with the public defender, and Dawn, if you could introduce yourself and your colleague and then make your budget presentation, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm Dawn Diener. I'm the public defender here in Nashville, and to my right is Annette Crutchfield. She is our new administrative services manager. She joined the office at the end of last year after Sandra Ray retired. She comes to us from the state system, so she's been a great help.
So she knows everything that she needs to know.
She knows everything I need to know. So she's been a great help with our state funding issues this year. So, well, we are here again to report what wonderful work the Public Defender's Office continues to do. As always, I'd like to thank our staff. They do a great job. They include lawyers, investigators, social workers, secretaries, interns, all kinds of folks who work to help our clients with the many needs that they have. This year, of course, we have continued to represent poor defendants in our criminal court system who cannot afford to hire a lawyer. We closed 25,793 cases in fiscal year 12. And those are broken down in the handout which I gave to you, each of you, which is some information I provided to the state system this year during their budget process as we work to try to improve our state funding levels. I think the message for our office overall this year is that the volume of work continues to be extremely heavy for us given the staffing that we have, and that is across the board. I asked, including in just simple areas like the phones. We did a study last year, and over an 8-week period, we averaged 500 calls that come into the office every day between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., which is about 1 call per minute. That is really a sign of how busy everybody in the office is. The reason that I provided you with that handout is that it breaks down where we are in terms of our staffing shortages based upon the 1999 weighted caseload standards that the state developed for public defenders in Tennessee. And of course, back in that time, you, Mr. Mayor, were there at the office and participated in that, or I think we're sort of at the end stage of that, or the beginning stage of that. And based upon those numbers, we are currently operating with shortages of lawyers, around 28 lawyers more that we need. We need more investigators based upon those numbers. We're short 6 investigators and 8 secretaries. Now, in fact, the report that came with the 1999 study indicated that back in 1999, the state believed we needed to have 47 lawyers at our office to be handling the workload that we had at that time. And
we didn't have 47 lawyers.
We did not, and we still do not. 14 years later, we still are not even at the levels that they recommended in 1999. Now, I say this to you all, but would point out also that Metro has certainly kept up its bargain and its requirements in terms of how it funds this office. The real problem, as we have discovered in the last few years, we believe, is with our state funding. We've been working for the last year and a half to try to remedy the problems with our state funding and to convince the state that they have greater obligations for funding public defense services in the metropolitan government. We continue to work on that. I don't know that this year will bring a final resolution to that issue. I am hopeful that it will bring some added revenues to Metro government this year for public defender services. But I think it's a matter that we need to continue to pay attention to and that we need to continue to work on to improve our levels of state funding for public defender services in Nashville. We have outlined and we have made several budget improvement requests, and I can discuss any of those individually that you'd like to go over, but we have needs, as I think this information shows. We're doing our best to try to do as much as we can with what we currently have while we work to improve our funding from state government. The truth is the state can either, can fund the office the way we believe that it needs to be funded in order for us to do the work that we are currently handling, or we can ask that the courts not appoint us to so many cases, and the work can then be shifted to the Indigent Defense Fund, which the state has responsibility for funding. All is to say, the staff at our office is doing well above the work that they should be doing based upon what the standards for adequate representation for defendants in Tennessee are. That's what I would have to say right now. If there's questions, I'd be happy to take them.
So where do things stand with this? I know you're asking the state for more funds. Is there any possibility that there are funds coming in, additional funds?
We are
allegedly money in the governor's budget for some additional funding, right?
Yes, the governor's recommended budget this year included an improvement of a little over $500,000 for Metro government for its public defender services. That was well shy of what we believed.
Is that in response to the argument that there had been this decade of underfunding?
Yes, I think it is directly in response to that.
So other jurisdictions aren't receiving that, or is it just?
Nashville and Memphis are the two jurisdictions that are in the same boat, so to speak. The rest of the state has a district public defenders conference with 29 judicial districts. Those districts are funded in a completely different way than Nashville and Memphis. So the two districts that are impacted by the budget improvements in the governor's recommended budget are Davidson County and Shelby County.
And then the reference to the Spangenberg report from 1999, are the other jurisdictions in Tennessee meeting the standards under the Spangenberg report?
I don't know specifically. My estimation would be no. The AOC, the Administrative Office of the Courts, released a report in 2011 on indigent defense fund expenditures, and what they found in that report is that statewide the Public Defenders Conference is still vastly underfunded by the state. They believe that if the administration, if state government would fund the public defender system adequately, that could potentially relieve some of the burden on the indigent defense fund.
And that was in 2007?
That was the 2011 report
2011.
from the AOC.
In the 2011 report, what did they say your staffing situation was?
They didn't specifically address Davidson County. They were addressing the statewide system overall. And I think at that point, the last weighted caseload study done by the state comptroller's office was in 2007. There are still problems statewide with collection of data. And so the comptroller's recommendation was to take those numbers with a grain of salt. But I think at that point they were recommending that the Public Defenders Conference was, as a whole, across the state, was more than 100 lawyers short of where they needed to be.
And what did they say about Davidson County?
They did not specifically address Davidson County in that 2007 report.
In the Spangenberg report that you refer to in '99, who authorized that, or who?
The state legislature.
State.
Yes.
State hired Spangenberg to do it?
Yes. At the same time, they did a judicial weighted caseload study. They did a district attorney's weighted caseload study. And so that was a state-authorized study. I do know this year that the governor's budget also recommends some funding for the Administrative Office of the Courts to work on improving its general sessions caseload data collection. And I remain hopeful that means that the administration, the governor's administration, is potentially focused on trying to get better data statewide so that it can better judge the needs of individual districts like Davidson County. I feel confident that if we could get accurate comparisons of ourselves to other districts across the state, that we would show that we are working very, very hard and not getting near as much funding as we need.
Well, next to jail overcrowding, which is not an issue right now in Davidson County, I would say collection of data and even data across the state has been an issue that Tori knows has been around our entire adult lives. I mean, we've talked about this for 30 years.
Right. And I think it's good that the Administrative Office of the Courts is ready to focus on that, and that the governor's office is willing to try to help them do that, particularly when it comes to General Sessions Court. And we're ready to start working with the local agencies. I've talked with JIS and the clerk's office about setting up to make sure that we're part of that and that we're collecting our data the way we need to be.
Right. And then, so am I noting a slight sense of optimism that perhaps in the next couple of years that the state's support will increase because they'll have this data?
Yes, I think as the public defender, I am an idealist and internally optimistic that things can improve, while realizing I also need to be realistic. That's not going to happen overnight, and it won't happen if we don't push it. And so I think that's something that's my responsibility, and certainly your administration through the finance department, through the legal department, has been working to help us to do that within the state system.
So what are the improvements you're asking for?
Well, we have the basic rent increases that we are always asking for. Our lease is up for renegotiation right now. We're working on that. We will probably need some expenses related to rent, we're guessing, but we really don't know. We've done the best prediction
Who's
we can.
handling that? Is that General Services, or is that you all?
Yes.
Yeah, real property.
Real property?
Yeah, they're actually, we're working on that. There could be some good news coming out of that.
Good.
Your optimism is
I'm always
well-founded.
optimistic.
She's even making the finance director optimistic.
That's good. We need investigators. We do not have an investigator for our general sessions team or our juvenile court team, which means the lawyers, when that needs to be done, that falls to the lawyers to do. Investigation is just as important, frankly, if not more important, than good lawyering. A lawyer is only as good as the information they have about the case. We have an additional social worker position that we were able to have partial funding for out of last year's budget improvements. We hope to be able to fully fund that second social worker position that we received last year. We also need lawyers. We need additional general sessions lawyers. General sessions court tends to be where our biggest crunch is right now. And so we need additional lawyers for general sessions court and for criminal court. We have practically no travel or training budget at this point, and frankly, training for the lawyers is just as important as it is for other professionals. You would not want to send police officers out onto the street without the proper training, and you really shouldn't have lawyers representing individuals in court whose liberty is at stake unless they've got proper training as well. So we are asking for improvements for travel and training expenses. We are still looking for an immigration specialist. We have reduced our request there this year. Last year we requested a full-time attorney for that position. This year we're requesting a part-time slot to see if we can handle the workload with bringing on a part-time immigration law specialist. We're also looking to be able to try to expand our community efforts. As I'm sure you're aware, these days people are looking to their metro agencies to come into the community and talk to them about what it is they do and to provide assistance in the community and outreach. And the truth is that I think that there are a lot of individuals in Davidson County who still go to court charged with crimes, who are unrepresented, who would qualify for public defender services, but don't know enough about us and don't know what we can do for them to help them. And so they don't come see us. And it really oftentimes results in back-end problems. People who come to our office after they've been to court without a lawyer, they're now suffering some negative consequence to what happened when they represented themselves. And it was really something that we could have helped them avoid if they'd just known about us, known what we could do for them, and came to the office. So we're looking to try to find a part-time person who can help improve our efforts with the outreach and making sure that we can get people in the door on the front end of things rather than on the back end. One very good example of that these days is with driver's license issues. With the state statute being passed that suspends people's driver's license if they haven't paid court costs within a year, we've seen an overwhelming influx of individuals coming to our offices saying, I just got this notice, my driver's license is going to be suspended, I didn't have a lawyer on this case, what do I do now? And so now we're having to try to help them. And it's smart for us to try to help them at that point, because if we don't help them at that point trying to get their driver's license privileges reinstated, odds are they're going to turn into new clients charged with driving on a suspended license. And we want to try to avoid that if we can. It makes sense. So those are a short outline of what our needs are at this point, our greatest needs.
So the additional $500,000, does that come in as revenue that will go into next year's budget?
Yes and no. That was one of my questions. You haven't assumed any of that revenue in your budget you submitted thus far, right?
Correct. When we
Right.
submitted the budget, the governor's budget had just been
Right, yeah.
released.
So I didn't think so. I mean, I think that the agreement that we've had is that obviously if they get any additional revenue from the state, I mean, we're not going to take Metro money away from the office to, to make up the difference. So if they get whatever that number is, that will be in addition to their budget, which could be used to fund hopefully some of these issues that Dawn has just talked about.
That would be our hope,
Yeah.
yes.
So I mean, I think that's I don't know if that's not formalized, but I mean, that's the agreement. I mean, we're not gonna take $500,000 away from what I don't see us doing that. I thought that'd be kind of foolish on my part to recommend that. And not a good idea. So there would be additional money, and then anything, if anything else we do would be on top of whatever additional revenue you get. And the legislature adjourns in late April, like they're talking about. We should know.
We'll know the state budget before our budget's proposed.
Could be.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
It depends on when they get
Yeah.
out. But
Hopefully.
their current schedule is to get out in April, which would be right before. But, I mean, right now, I mean, I think that money is in the budget. So
Yes.
I doubt if it comes out. The only issue, I know you're making some efforts to try to increase it a little bit.
We are. We're still continuing to meet with the governor's administration to see if there's the funding issue, but then there's also the amendment to the statute on how we're funded.
So I think we can assume, I hate to say assume, but we should be thinking that we're going to get a minimum of the 500, is that what it is, Dawn?
It's about $515,000.
So assume we're going to have that money, and then see, I don't think it'll be less than that, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Okay. All right, I get it. So we'll have to wait and see. You got any questions, Rich?
No, sir.
Greg?
Nope.
Well, Dawn, good job.
Thank you.
Tell everybody good work and keep it up, and we'll just do the best we can with however things end up.
I know you will. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good seeing you.
You too.
Actually, that happened to me with Fred's.